Okay, hopefully you can hear me now. How's everybody doing this morning? Let me know in chat if you guys can hear me. I have made some changes to my OBS, and I think I'm still trying to figure out a few things, so this may take me just a second to get things corrected here. So forgive me for, well, for one, for saying and for two, trying to get these things sorted. There we go. All right, Josh Ryan says, yes, you can hear. For those who don't know, this is Mrs. Let's Talk About Reaper. This is Kathy. Let's see, Jeff, controlling Reaper with the Web OSC thing. That is, you know what? I guess if we're ready, we can just go ahead and get started. So let me get Reaper pulled up on my main screen here. And switch scenes and hope for the best. If I can find the right scene. Good morning, Batman. All right, I think I've got one more scene there. I guess we'll just we'll start off with some Q&A since I've already got some semblance of a question. Jeff, would you like for me to show you how to do the web remote? And I don't know if you guys have paid much attention to the... I can't think of what the thing... My English is just totally leaving me today. Okay, can you hear me now? I think I've had to take OBS out of studio mode because it was causing me some issues. Anyway, what I was trying to say initially was that I changed the latency setting on YouTube live stream so I could broadcast in full 4K. I found that when I did less latency, it was better for real-time communication, but it wouldn't allow me to get my full resolution. So I'm broadcasting today in 4K instead of 1440p, and I'll have to figure out that studio mode thing a bit later. Let's get back over to the Reaper screen, and Jeff, let's see if we can cover your concern. Let me make sure I find the right scene, since that's the fun thing about doing stuff live is you'll mess up everything every time. Let's see, that's full screen with camera. Let's try that. Hopefully at this point everybody can still hear. So let's take a look and see how to set up the Good Morning Audio Mutt Studios. You will probably hear this about 7 to 10 seconds after I set it, but thanks for joining. So as far as setting up the... Oh, you got the remote working. Got you. Kathy will be helping me to keep track of chat this morning. Let me see if I can catch up here. Got the web. Would like to hear the music through your phone. Doing that, Jeff, is not something that's really baked into Reaper. There is a plugin that you can use. Let me see if I can remember what it's called. Oh, there it is, Sonobus. There's a plugin called Sonobus, and I've only used this once, so I really can't give you much of a tutorial on it at the moment, but let me see if I can get a browser window up and find a little information on that for you. So with Sonobus, you can use this to stream over the internet to this is kind of similar to audio movers, I think it's called. The listen to audio movers, whatever it's called, where you are able to good morning chicken McFry. What the heck? Give me just a sec. I'm afraid I don't have moderators, it's just me, so we'll try to get back focused here. So with Sonobus, you can add this to a track in Reaper and configure it to send audio over the internet. So you'll be able to monitor the music from your phone, but there will be a little bit of latency since it's being done over the internet. I wish that I could show you a bit more about how to use that, but like I said, I've only used it once, so I'm probably not the best person to try to explain that for the moment. What I had hoped to do today, and I'll try to cover comments and questions as much as I can as the missus keeps me up to date on it, but I'd like to edit some drums live and, like I said, cover any questions that you might have. You may have seen the kind of wacky promo that I did earlier this week with the drum tracking bootcamp that I'm planning to do in the near future. Good morning, Michael. Coffee. I've got, where is my coffee? I almost forgot it. It's over here on the side. There, I couldn't go without drinking coffee on camera. But this is the session from where I tracked drums for that drum tracking bootcamp promo. It's something that I did just while on my lunch break, which is why the video was kind of hokey. I put pretty much no time into it, maybe 10-15 minutes. So I will go ahead and play through this as is, and we'll see if we can get it edited and cleaned up to better align with the grid. I like to think that I'm pretty good at timing, but I'm far from perfect. Let's see what we got here. Alright, so that is the raw, unadulterated performance, if that's the right word. As you can see, I have a handful of effects on things for my drum processing. I can cover a few of these real quick before we get into the actual editing phase. Most of these I don't have anything on. I just kind of ran the drums as is. I did have a correlation meter on my overheads just to check a few things there. This is a plugin from Vox Ingo, that is very helpful for determining whether you have multi-mic'd things in phase. Let's see, Doom is asking, do I write my own music or do I just mix? I would say I write more than I mix. The piece that you just heard was something that I literally just kind of made up on the fly on lunch break. So let me take a look here. Batman, I'm having trouble. Looks like I'm having trouble with the overlay here. Let me see if I can squeeze all that into the screen. There we go. Having trouble adjusting latency settings on the Octa capture. Have to turn the track monitor, turn off the track monitor to actually play. I think that really depends on a handful of things. It could be an issue of a certain plugin that you're using. If you're, let's see, if you're working through like an amp sim or something, you should be able to get near real time. And I don't know if you can clearly see this at the top, but mine is down to about 10 milliseconds round trip, which to me is plenty comfortable. I'll bring up my studio capture interface here to show you. If I can find the right section here. But like right now, I've just got my, well, since I'm not recording at the moment, I've got my audio buffer set at the default. And there is a low latency mode option that kind of shaves, I don't know how it works, but it tends to shave some time off of what you would expect. Like I'm on 256 samples, but I'm still getting 10 milliseconds. Typically, I can take this down to 3 on the audio buffer size, which I think takes it down to maybe 64 or 32, and I'm still able to play just fine, but certain plugins will cause it to give me some pops and glitches or just some other problems that make tracking live a bit difficult. Maybe we can discuss that a bit more on Discord, and I can take a look at your screen and be able to help figure that out. Let's see. Todd is asking, do I have a course or video on recording multi-takes of drums? I do have a handful of things about drum tracking and working with takes, but the current plan is actually to do a full-on boot camp for tracking drums, and we can definitely cover multiple takes in that. I would be glad to answer some questions for you. If you're not on our Discord, give me just a moment to pull that up and throw a link for those who aren't familiar. People that do this streaming all the time, I don't see how they keep up with doing all this. There's so many different things to control. There is a link for Discord there in the description now, and we can definitely be able to talk a bit more in depth and show more things than I'm able to show during the typical live stream there. And no worries about sidetracking. I mean, I kind of like the idea of you guys helping to drive the conversation. So Doom is asking if I've upgraded to 22H2 yet. You know, I'm not sure. Let's find out which version I'm running. I am running 21H2. I don't think that the update has shown as available for me yet, and I'm at a point in my life where I don't necessarily force the update until the official rollout comes to me, because, I mean, this is my production system, so I just as soon wait for it. I do hear that the new update does help a lot with the plugin loading latency with certain things like Plugin Alliance and also SoftTube. I wonder if any of you guys can confirm that. I have reported a long-lasting bug with Plugin Alliance about that, and they have acknowledged. For those who don't know, I will show you quickly. Let's just take this Tom 2 track, for example. If I go to this and open up British channel from IK Multimedia, if I can spell it, that opens in about a second. Now, by that same token, if I open up the SSL 4000G from Plugin Alliance, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 seconds. And that doesn't seem like a big deal for 4 seconds, but if I have 50 tracks with this SSL strip, channel strip on there, it will take 4 to 5 seconds for each instance. So that leads to an incredibly long load time if you're using a lot of Plugin Alliance plugins, and that's kind of why I've stopped using them until that issue is resolved. I still haven't had a response on my ticket with them until since April of this year, and the problem still exists. Let me get caught up in chat here. All right, I think that we have got most of the concerns covered. So going back to the drum editing here, what would you guys like to see? Would you rather me go ahead and start editing this, or do you have any questions about any of the plugins that I may have on the tracks or things of that nature? I'm going to go ahead and hide my dock while the powers that be decide the direction that this stream will start going. And one of the things that I've already done ahead of time is to group my tracks. You can see up here I've got the grouping icon toggled on, and selecting one item selects the entire group. Actually, it looks like I have not actually grouped these yet, which is fine, because one of the things that I'd like to do first is to make sure that my snare top and bottom are aligned. So I'll zoom in on those. And I'll just grab a transient here, and I can see that they're off a little bit. Now what I like to do is I will put my snare top and bottom into a snares folder. And if you're not aware, in Reaper, when you have something in a folder, it gives you an aggregate wave view. And this way I can slip at it, and that's achieved by holding down Alt and left-clicking and dragging on an item. That is moving that media item inside of the bounds of the edges of that item. So it's moving the waveform inside of the boundaries. And with that, I just want to make sure that my my hills and valleys are roughly the same. You're not going to get them exact because it's even though it's two mics recording the same source, it's different sides of that drum. My primary concern is just making sure that they start in the same relative place, and again, that my hills and valleys are about the same. You'll get some variations over the performance, but if you have these way off, you'll have some issues with phase cancellation. So that's looking pretty good there. And next I want to go and take a look at my overheads. Audio, let's see. Oh, you're talking to Todd. And that is actually the same in Reaper. Let me open up another project that has multiple takes. Like I said, this one was a one take that I did while on lunch break, so there's not a whole lot to show there. A little bit of profanity in the name of this one. Sam, if you are still on board, this is your performance from 2 years ago on a song that you tracked for the Gunpowder Project, or Gunpowder Plot, excuse me. But if I look down here towards the end, we can see, like this snare top, for example, this is take 2 of 2. You can't see the other take currently, but if I hit Control L, that will expose the take lanes. I'll blow this up a bit so you can see it better. And I can choose which of these takes that I'd like to hear. Now, if I've got my drums grouped, which I do in this case, I can, let's say if I wanted to place a split here and switch to the other take, you can see my other grouped tracks have switched to that take as well. Now, there is in the pre-release of the pre-releases of Reaper, there's something that they're working on called fixed media lanes or track lanes or something with lanes to enable what looks to be swipe comping and something more similar to the playlist system in Pro Tools. Again, I can't really speak intelligently on the topic because I've never used Pro Tools, but to my understanding, it's supposed to bring a bit more sanity to the take system. Since this take system is all that I've ever known, it's pretty comfortable and a good workflow for me. Matter of fact, if you want to see that in action here, let me see if we've got more takes here. We've only got one take on that part, so we've got multiple takes on the last part here. Like if I wanted to work with this for comping, I've got, and I showed this in my drum editing and Reaper course on Pro Mix Academy, but I've got a couple of custom actions that change mouse modifiers that just helps me to do my edits a bit faster. If I enable the fast edit mode here, what it does is it just allows me to left click on an item, make sure I've got snapping turned off, and I do. And what that will do is it will cut to the left of my cursor and add a crossfade. So if I wanted to switch to a different take here, I could add my cut on both sides, and now I can switch to that take for that portion. And if I don't want to see all those other takes, I'll just collapse my take lanes with Control L. And thank you, I do not have a Mac, so that is helpful. It's also in your options menu, I believe. Yeah, under options there is show all takes when room, and that in anything that you see in your menus, they will typically give you the current key press for that F1 is assigned to it. But here, I'll solo the drums here for a second. And in that case, I mean, this one still needs some editing, but I can switch back and forth between those two takes on each section. From what I understand with the new fixed media lanes method, you won't necessarily have to make all these cuts. The problem that some people are having with these cuts is, well, it cuts everything, and you may not want to do that. I haven't tried that yet, so I really can't, unfortunately can't speak intelligently on how the new take system works either. I can show you real quick. You might find that interesting. Now, for those of you who have seen the movie Fight Club, you know we don't talk about Fight Club, so we will not discuss anything that we see in the pre-release forum because it's technically Fight Club. Now, me being me, I asked the question not too terribly long ago, and I'll zoom in on this. Since I don't have any experience outside of Reaper, I wanted someone to explain, like I'm 5, what benefit this will bring. And if we take a look at Pharaohpop's answer here, this is the typical comped audio session in Reaper, and we can see that there are splits across all of the takes, which, like I said, it works for me. But with the solo markers and take lanes, you can literally just draw over the different takes what you want to play without actually cutting them. So what you'll end up having, I believe, is similar to Pro Tools. You would end up having a bit of a playlist type thing up top that just shows what you've drawn over to indicate which take you want played where. There are a couple of other videos in here somewhere that kind of show it a little bit better. Let's see, Michael. Can Reaper users do the quantize? And I'll have to fix this chat overlay thing. It's just something I installed yesterday, but I guess you guys can see it just fine in real-time chat. Can Reaper users do the quantize audio tracks like Cubase? Well, that's another one of those things where, once again, I've not used Cubase, but I can. I mean, you can. There is a quantize function, and you'll probably have to tell me if this is exactly like what you're wanting, but if I were to group my drums, which I need to do that anyway, and let's see, I want to disable selecting one item selects groups to begin with, but I can take the snare top, for example, and use my dynamic split option, which I press the letter D to bring that up. Hopefully you can see this, but it's showing a line here where it believes the transients to be. I can set the transient sensitivity by clicking the Set Transient Sensitivity button. And here I can determine a threshold for what I want to be considered a transient. And I can adjust the sensitivity until the performance looks to be about like what I want. That would be fine there. And at this point, I can either add stretch markers or I can split the selected items. But in this case, no, the reason that I disable the option to select all of my items in the group is because I want this to only pay attention to my snare track at the moment. So what I'll do is split selected items and grouped items, but I want it to be based on the transient detection on my snare drum. I'm going to double check these here real quick, and we'll leave those pads in there. That's fine. So at this point, if I split that, you can see all of my items are split. And once again, if I select all my items, let me see if I can remember how to do this, because I very rarely, if ever, actually quantize anything. I just like to do it manually. So I've got this selected, and I can hit Q to quantize. And I can't quite, okay, so that did not move my group, so I think I may need to turn this back on. Selecting one item selects group. And if I quantize, that probably broke things. Let's just see what happens. So it did quantize, but of course it's left some gaps in there. There are some other things, and I show this in the drum editing and Reaper course as well. I'm not trying to be a product shill, but there's a lot more information in that course than I can pack into a live stream. There is an action that I would use for this, and that is fill gaps between selected items. And if I run that, that has filled those gaps and has probably caused a bit of a problem, but at the same time I can grab this edge of one and pull it over to crossfade. I don't know, I just find that quantizing causes a lot of problems. It's doable, and it's doable correctly, but I don't do it often enough to really show it well. The way that I prefer to do my drums, as I said, is more of a manual approach. Let me get these overheads lined up real quick, and I'll show you my method for that. And all I'm doing for this is essentially the same thing that I did on the snares, is just making sure that for the most part my hills and valleys are pretty well close to each other. So I'll find a heavy transient like this, and if I select just my my overhead ride side track, I need to disable the selecting one item selects group again. I can move that and just make sure that my hills and valleys are good, which they appear to be just naturally, which is fine. Batman, thank you so much for contributing. You know, you do this like every stream. I'm gonna have to like make this a second job just to allow you to keep donating, but thank you so much. So once I've got my overheads lined up, now some people like to line up their rooms. It really just depends. I tend to just leave my rooms alone. I've got room mics, well, across the room from the drums, as the name would suggest, and I don't tend to line them up with my overheads and my snare transient because it is a physical impossibility for the sound to reach those microphones at the exact same time as it hits the close mics because they're clearly across the room. Also, that difference, thank you so much, Jimmy. With the difference, how can I word this? It sounds unnatural to me to have my room mics at the exact same time as the close mics. The whole purpose of having the room mics is to add some depth and some life to the drum sounds. So now that I've got things lined up in the fashion that I want, we can go ahead and start editing. Now, the way that I edit, I tend to not, as I said before, I don't tend to edit things perfectly to the grid. I like to take larger sections and edit the drums in context. A drummer will typically have good timing with himself or herself, but may drift a little bit on the music. So if we can take the larger sections that are mostly in time and get the high points on beat, we're usually pretty good. Jimmy, you're talking about aligning when there's more snare bleed. That is a bit of a delicate art that has to do a whole lot with mic placement. I plan to cover that a lot more in the actual drum editing, the drum tracking boot camp. But it takes a long time to get it right. I don't get it right every time. It takes a whole lot of trial and error. But once you get your mics in the optimal position to utilize their rejection pattern, like the polar patterns to reject what you don't need. Now, you can't completely eliminate bleed, but you can definitely control it to where you get a cleaner signal. So like if I take a listen to my snare top mic in solo here, well, let me solo the drums as a whole, and if we listen to what I'm doing during the quieter part here, it's closed hat, but it's still kind of hat heavy. And if I take a listen to my snare top, yes, you can hear the hat in that. Yes, you can hear the kick. But you see how much quieter that is. Now, I can definitely stand to have placed that mic a lot better. I don't know if you heard this earlier, but like I said, I did do this on my lunch break, so I took 0 time actually setting up. I just left everything where it was and did the recording. But the long and short of it is, if you optimize your mic placement, you should have minimal minimal bleed. There's not really any way to completely eliminate bleed unless you're using samples. And honestly, I wouldn't recommend eliminating all bleed because all of that bleed is what makes the kit sound like a cohesive unit instead of a bunch of samples thrown together. And let's take a look at getting this edited. So I want to pay more attention mostly to my kick and my snare because theoretically I'm mostly in time. Now I could be wrong, but we'll find out shortly. I want to make sure that snapping is turned off because I need to be able to move these freely. And let's see, throwing a gate on the hats. Jason, that could be really, you could use a gate on the snare, and a lot of people will do that. Now, it's a lot easier to use a gate on the snare if you're using closed hi-hats. If it is open hi-hats, you may have a lot harder time with that because there's so much bleeding over into the transient. Something else you could use that is really nice is Wilkinson debleeder. Let's play with this for a moment. This is a fun plugin. So with Wilkinson debleeder, this is a bit of an intelligent gate, and it's made to help well, as the name would suggest, debleed a source and help you to isolate the true source and remove things that you didn't want. So let's play with this for a moment and see how we can clean up this snare. And even with the default settings, it's already doing a good job. And that is working very well. Let's move on to a heavier section and see how it works. And if I turn this off, so as you can hear there, the Wilkinson debleeder actually does a really good job at controlling this. And it's very affordable. I think it's maybe like $20 or $30. And I've used it in the past to save some projects where I did a terrible job of mic placement. So if we go back into this and let's take a look at, the first thing that I want to do is make sure that my kick transient is lined up on the first beat. Now if this were multiple takes, I would want to make sure that Oh, Todd is asking what is LTAR. That is chat speak for Let's Talk About Reaper. And Batman says, yes, you can use a de-esser to help tame the cymbals. And most definitely, using a de-esser or some tape saturation will help to relieve harshness. And, well, I guess that's the best way to put it, is it will relieve harshness. It won't take the hats or the cymbal bleed out completely, but it definitely helps to improve the sound. Now, if these were multiple takes, you would want to line up the first transient of all your takes. That way you've got a pretty good starting point if you end up cutting to other takes further down the line. So with my first kick transient lined up, and I know that throughout most of this I'm going to be on 8th note, so I'm going to change my my grid size to 1/8 just to help me focus a bit better. And at this point I'll go ahead and engage my fast edit. Now, for those who don't have the fast edit button, I do have a video on my channel that shows you how to create that, but just for the sake of argument, if you don't have fast edit, the way that I would approach this is I would click to the left of what I want to move. Now I've got my tracks grouped, so I'll press S to split, and now I can hold Alt and left click and drag to shift that snare transient to get that in place. You don't have to necessarily go all the way into a sample level, but just get it mostly lined up. You want to create a human feel here. Now, one thing I don't like about this method is I have to go back and left click and drag to do that crossfade. I think there's probably a key press for that, but I would just as soon use my fast edit mode, because like here, since I've moved something, the next transient is of course out of time. As you make these cuts, there's going to be a constant push and pull, so you can have something that's mostly in time, and your first cut will offset everything, so you're constantly working unless you cut on both sides of something. So at this point with my fast edit armed, I'll left click and that's automatically created my crossfade, and I no longer have to hold Alt. I can just left click and drag the bottom edge of the media item and get that transient in place. So now I'll move further down the line, and this next snare is out of time, so I'll left click and create my crossfade and split and drag that in time. As far as the zooming in and out, this is generally frowned upon, but I don't see so well, so I tend to zoom in and out a lot just to be sure. But if you have good eyesight and don't worry so much about exact precision, this can become a very quick workflow. Now, right here, I'm not looking at my hat mic. I do have a separate hat mic, but I can tell that that is one of the closed hat hits, and I want those to be pretty well on time because that preserves the feel of the song. So I'll just place a cut there and slide this into place. Good morning, Perper. Thank you for joining us, man. Now, as you can see, since all of these are grouped, all of my drum tracks, and I've got 11 drum tracks, they are all cut and being moved at the same time. Now that I've got that hat in place, I'll make another cut before this next hit, and we'll get this kick in place. And as I said, I'm just focusing on the kick and the snare because everything else should theoretically fall into place. Now, if this were some performance that had a lot of crazy fills, which I do a little bit busy work once we get to the heavier part of the song, I'll go back through and make some additional cuts, like if I've got some tom fills that are out of place. But for right now, I just want to very quickly go through here and make sure that my snare and kick are in place, and then we'll listen to the first section. Now, all these movements that I'm making are pretty minute. It looks like at most they're a few milliseconds. Like I said, I'm not the best drummer in the world, but I'm far from the worst, so I tend to be fairly well on time. And in listening to this performance, with the exception of some of the fills in the end where I lost my, kind of lost my place in the music, you can't really tell that I'm out of time. So we should be able to knock this out in just a few minutes, depending on how focused I can stay, which is a long shot. This is looking pretty good here. Now that looks like that's probably a hat transient. I can cross-reference that and check my actual hat spot mic, and that indeed is a slight hat transient there. So I want to scroll back up, and what I meant before about not cutting everything and editing in larger groups, like I can see that snare hit is out of place, as is this hat. I'll cut before the hat and drag all this back, and that has mostly taken care of my next snare transient. So instead of going through and cutting and quantizing everything, I just look for the bigger hits. That's like another hat. I'll slide that over, and that hat's in place, and then of course move the kick in place with it. Because, as I said, I was mostly in time with myself, but maybe just a little bit off with the music. We should be, oops, I think that was a mistake. I should cut a little bit before because I can see that little blip here. Now, if you're working with things and having trouble seeing, you can hold Shift and press up, and that will increase the size of the waveform. This method is not changing the volume, it's just changing it visually. So if you have poor eyesight, it makes it a lot easier for you to make decisions on your cuts and slip edits. Move that back, and I need to bring that stuff down again. I think I blew it way out of proportion to demonstrate. We should be getting pretty near the end of this first section, at least I think. I'll need to do a cut on both sides of this because mistakes were made. Now, for those who don't know, when you've got your crossfade here, the split and subsequent crossfade has turned this media item into a bit of an island, for lack of a better word. So that's why I can slip edit in here and it's not affecting anything downstream. But as you can see there, I'm starting to pull over some information from the opposite side of the split. So what you want to do is get your transient in place, and if you happen to see more of the next area, you can hold Shift over the crossfade and move that crossfade so you don't have, basically you move that crossfade to hide portions of the next section that you don't want to be heard. Set the default size of the waveform. I think so. I could be wrong, but I will be glad to explore that option. Let's take a look. So I am looking at, okay, there actually is, Michael, there is a minimum height for the audio peak waveform appearance, and my minimum height is currently set to 8 pixels. And hide media item peaks display when the media item has. This may not necessarily work in the way that I'm thinking. The dialog at the bottom says hide media items peak display when the media item height is less than this threshold. So I'm not sure if that will do what you're looking for. Let me check my actions list and see. I'm going to try this find shortcut option and press Shift up. And okay, so that action does increase peaks display zoom for project. So I want to take a look and search for peaks display. Oh, there's a peaks display setting. I did not know that, so let's run that and see what I get. Well, that's good to know. I think that's essentially just doing the same thing, but it's nice to have that slider. So let's go back to our options and just do a search for peaks display and see what comes up. I don't remember all these options. I mean, I'm literally guessing at this while we're talking. That's the fun part about these live streams is in a lot of cases, I don't know, I'm just guessing and hunting. There's one thing that I have learned is to just go into the actions list and start searching for certain words that are also in the preferences list and just see what you can find. I have not come across anything yet that looks like it would give me a default setting for your display peaks, and we've looped back around. But with shift up and down, it's definitely easy enough to go in there and change them. And I don't know that I would necessarily want a different default, because depending on your source material, you may have really tall peaks, you may have really small peaks. And it's nice just to be able to change them on the fly in a non-destructive manner like that. My wife is asking if when we open a new project, does it keep the display settings? Let's find out. Let's see, what was that action that I did? There was show peaks display. Let's crank this up to 10.5. Now if I go into my other project, where is it? And okay, so this does not cross it. Well, that's an existing project. So let me open another one. We'll just do a new one. I don't want to close that. I just want to open up a new tab. Not going to save it. Check, check, check. Alright, so I'm recording some audio after realizing that I had pre-roll engaged, and it is recording. I'll stop this and let's take a look at the peaks display. So that is that apparently goes to 0 on all new projects. So I'm kind of curious to ask in Discord if some of the other members know there may be an option to set a default, but at the moment I cannot find one. Let's see, we've got our snare, that kick is in place. I lost my train of thought, but that is okay. I totally don't mind the questions at all. I definitely want to see if we can get through editing this. I've edited this once before, and I think I was able to do it in just a few minutes. Whenever I'm doing these live, it's never as fast as if I'm just kind of in the zone, because I'm narrating everything that I do and also trying to field questions. Let's see, that is a little bit late, not much. Those are looking good, not bad enough for me to want to mess with. That's a nice big hit right there. Let's shift that just a hair. And these transients are huge now. I'm going to take them back down just a bit. And you are about changing that display peak. That is a global setting on the project, so you're not able to do it on a per item basis. But you can, of course, change the global setting as often as you need to with an easy key press. Those kicks are looking good. How far are we from... Okay, so we're almost to the break. I feel like I should have finished this by now. I'm going to cut back here a little bit. We are in the home stretch. That's a very minute movement there. We'll back this one up a bit. I agree with most of that. I mean, you definitely are a bit too hard on yourself. But, I started that Discord server primarily as a means to supplement the YouTube channel, because people would ask questions in the comment section on YouTube, and you can't share screenshots or do much of anything. Plus, YouTube likes to automatically moderate comments and delete things sometimes without me knowing, which is really bothersome. So Discord definitely gives us a way to interact better and share ideas more in real time. And no need to apologize. I love these distractions. For one, it lets me know that people are actually watching this rubbish, and for two, I like to answer questions when I can and explore possibilities, and a lot of times these questions lead to me learning stuff too. I definitely do not know everything there is to know about Reaper, and I feel like I'm learning every day. It's something new. I'm really loving this chat overlay plugin. I just got to figure out why it's causing a little bit of problems with longer lines, but that was one of those things that I just added last night during a bout with insomnia, so I really didn't research it other than just making sure it worked and hope that it would work well during the stream, and it seems to be doing well enough. Okay, we're here at the break, so I will get that kick transient and make a cut there and get this snare, whoops, I've gone the wrong direction. Get this snare transient in place. And let's make sure that we're good up to the heavier part that's coming. I have not forgotten about that. Jason we've talked about doing, how can I word this and be nice? I am a MIDI virgin. You'll notice that every time that I'm doing stuff on here, it's always with live audio. I know just enough about MIDI to be dangerous, but some of the guys on the Discord server have given me a bit of an interest in synth. But if I'm honest, it's really intimidating to me because I know nothing about synths. It's like you open a good morning, Pat. It's like you open up a synthesizer plugin and there's so many dials and controls, and then you look at pictures of people using synths in the 80s and stuff, and they've got wires running everywhere, and it's just insane. Alright, we've got this first bit edited, and let's go back and take a listen. You guys tell me, do you hear any glitches? If I'm lucky, I've got this all in really good time and have done a clean enough job to where it still sounds natural and human, but no glitches and no audible artifacts from editing. Let's see what we got. And that is the point where we stopped editing, and I wanted to make sure those were in. Now, one thing that I noticed about that I kind of like, and I think somebody had mentioned this on the YouTube channel where I'd posted this video initially, there's a bit of an interesting, I guess, push-pull or a slight, it sounds like it's a delayed snare hit. Now, as you can see from our editing, we've got our snare hits dead on, but that was me playing the guitars and playing the bass, and my playing up there is 100% natural. I didn't time align anything. So while the drums are in time, it's actually my guitar playing that's a bit lazy. It does create a nice feel, and I kind of like it. It really reminds me of John Bonham type of work in Led Zeppelin. Let's take a listen to this next section, which I've just given a marker called Heavier. Excuse me. Now, for those who don't know, with markers in Reaper, you can press numbers on your keyboard. What else would you press it on? Numbers on your mouse. And like I've got a 1 at the beginning, and I can press 1 to go straight back to that marker, 2 to go to number 2, 3, of course, to go to number 3. And if you have SWS extensions, there's a couple of things in there that I really enjoy, but sometimes I'll go back and place markers after the fact and they'll be in the wrong numerical order. You can go to extensions, and if, like I said, if you got SWS extensions installed, you'll have marker utilities, and there's an option to reorder the marker IDs, so it'll keep the names, but it'll put all your markers in numerical order. That comes in really handy if you're one like me who likes to place markers to remind you of things to go back to fix. So let's take a listen to this next section, and you'll probably hear a few timing issues in there, but we're going to fix them really fast. Now, as you can probably hear, that's already, I mean, it sounds good, but it's already out of time because of the cuts that we had made previously. And even though I've got my, well, I guess that's irrelevant at this point because we made sure our first transient is in line, so I just didn't play it well. So we'll go through and we'll follow the same process pretty much, is make some cuts and let's get our kick and snares lined up. Transients like this are always hard for me to work with. I usually just grab whatever is the first beginning of a larger wave file or waveform, because that could have just been my stick dragging on the skin or something to that effect, or electrical noise, or who knows. Now, if I recall, I didn't do much double bass work on this at all, so this should be a pretty easy edit. That was an unnecessary cut, so I'll undo that. And I know I say this a billion times when I'm doing drum editing streams, but my reason for not doing this the fast and easy way is I still want the performance to sound human. I don't want a 100% grid-aligned performance. I want something that just sits better and with the mix, creates a good feel, and is slightly augmented. Oh, Michael, markers, yeah, putting those things in order is quite fantastic. And don't sleep on regions either. Regions are my friend. I found a script the other day where it will automatically create regions. One thing I don't like is when you place a marker, let's sidetrack here for a minute. Like I've got this marker here for the bass intro, and my second marker is the break. I didn't put a lot of markers in this project. And typically, like if I were to do a verse, chorus, something like that, I would have a marker for each one just so I can quickly get to each section with a simple key press. But I also like to have regions. And I found an action in Repack. And now I've got to figure out what it was called. There we go. It is insert regions at markers and vice versa in time selection. Let's see. So like right here, I've got, let me just grab all the way through this part that's marked heavier, and I hope I'm remembering the right script. We'll find out. I'll run that. And that has created me two regions with the same name as the region that it was in. If I recall, I think if I run it without a time selection, which I'll get rid of my time selection, it should grab the whole project. Well, I guess I have to have something at the end here, so let's put a marker at the end. I'm hitting the wrong keys now. Shift M will bring up the marker dialog, which I like that since I can rename it all in one shot. Okay, so now I've got my marker for the end, and I've got no time selection. So if I go back to my actions list and try to find that same thing again, it's insert regions at markers with no time selection. It should grab everything up to the last one. And why do I like regions, you might ask? Because I have this regions clock that I use when I'm over on the other side of the room drumming, so I can see what section I'm currently on and how long until the, I didn't mean to make that time selection. I can see what section I'm on, how long until the next section, and it just helps to give me a visual reference when I'm tracking myself. So I love using regions and this regions clock script for that. Let's see. Now, I told my wife I was going to try to finish around 10, so let's hurry up and get this edit done and see what it sounds like. I hope to be able to make 10. I think that if I run over by a few minutes, she may forgive me, but I don't want to take up all of our time today because it's date night day. Those of you who are married most definitely do not allow your hobbies to consume all your time. I feel guilty about that because most days I work from home, and of course if I'm not working from home, I'm at the clinic working, but in both cases I'm spending a lot of time away from her, and then when I get home, if I'm working from home, once work is over, I'll still sit here at the computer, or I may have band practice or one of my many expensive hobbies, and I have to make sure that I allow time, and I don't mean that as bad as it sounds. I don't want to sound like I am forgetting my wife, but I want to make sure to give her proper time because she deserves it. Let me hit my channel real quick. I've got a link I'll pop in for you guys. If I can remember how to do this. Okay, the region's clock. I have another 6 hours. I don't think that's going to work. I really wish that this would give me a proper shareable link without having to click the video. So there is a full video about the region's clock and how that works, and wow, look at that hair. All right, let's get this done. I say date night, but it's almost 10 a.m. here. But the kicker is, I mean, we all know that once I get back here and get on something like this, time gets away from me so fast. And before you know it, it's time to go to bed, and we've not spent any time together. Now we've made it 25 years, and I'd like to continue our tradition of doing all right. Now right here, if I'm cheating a little bit, but as I look down here, I can see that I've got some tom hits that are out of place. So I think I am going to preemptive strike and try to correct some of those on the way. This is probably bad because I can barely see those things. And I'm going to I'm going to trust my instinct and just keep moving. We'll go back and listen once this is done. Fashionably late as usual. You haven't missed much. It's just been me rambling. Needless to say, I can't see or hear this from your perspective. How is this latency thing affecting things from your side? I like the fact that that's local.
Oh,
that's not our stream. That's what's sending to YouTube. I like the fact that it's allowing for much better resolution, but I wonder how it's affecting the perception. Close enough for jazz. I'm gonna avoid making a black hole joke. This is so true. If you guys should go and check out Audio Mutt Studios' YouTube channel. I don't know how long he's been on YouTube. I've just discovered his channel maybe a couple of months ago. And if memory serves, he is a heavy Pro Tools user, but has tried out Reaper. I don't know if he's made a decision to jump in with both feet just yet, but I'm really enjoying the content over there, and he definitely deserve more subscribers, so go over there and show him some love. I want to listen to this part real quick because I'm kind of confused by what I'm seeing. I'm like, surely my timing isn't that bad, but it looks like it is, so let's see what I got here. Okay, so I just had a really delayed hit there. Most of the time I can figure this out by sight, but it can be a struggle at times. 54th anniversary. My in-laws just hit that 54 themselves. I see it as W English. I know you as Metal God. I may call you by a billion different names, but I wonder if maybe you're thinking about Jeremy from Recording Studio Loser. He's been trying out everything. I'm pretty sure he tried out Cubase last week. And he also tried out BandLab, I think it's called, which is kind of interesting as a 100% browser-based DAW. I'm not sure how much real work you can get done with that, but it might be fun to pull some tracks into a Chromebook, though, and see what you can do with it. I'm very curious to see if this edit is going to end up sounding like rubbish, because I am totally not paying attention to what I'm doing. And she doesn't have a mic over there, but the missus is saying it's muscle memory, which it kind of is. I feel like there's probably something, and that's a very long stretch with no transients, but I'm going to trust my instincts and experience and just hope that I'm making logical cuts here. John from Reaper blog does this like in his sleep. He usually listens to something else, like has some background music playing while he edits, and does it all by sight. Doesn't even bother to check it because he's just that good, and he knows that when he's done, it's going to be right. Coincidentally, it's John that taught me how to do this, and I still have not. Oh, Dan Worrell's about to start. That's great. That's gonna take away my entire audience. I should probably watch that too. We should watch it together on my channel. No. All right, let's I'm trying my best to get done with this. I probably should have some background music for you guys while I finish this. Since I'm knee-deep in drum editing, does anyone... Oops, messed that up. Does anyone have any drum editing specific questions at this point? Or are you just here because of the coffee? If you're here because of the coffee, I'm fine with that. We need to go buy more coffee today, though. Now, those of you who have been with the channel for a while, do you remember a live stream that I did? It may have been last year or possibly I don't think there was a year before. There was a half year before. The channel is just about to hit 2 years old, I think. If you check the stats on it, it'll probably say it's like 13 years old, but I renamed my personal channel to Let's Talk About Reaper, and my personal channel only had like 2 videos on it, so it doesn't really count. Oh, I got sidetracked. The live stream where I tasted the Fruity Pebbles coffee creamer. Yeah, John, the tips to go faster are to stay focused, work at a less zoomed in position, trust my instincts, and stop second guessing myself. The other part is get LASIK so I can see. Thank you for being on here, John. I didn't know you were here. Now this is, I ask you this on every stream, but feel free to berate me in the comments and tell everybody what I could be doing better. And that sounds joking, but I am always interested in learning and improving. As you said, I do know what I need to do to go faster, but I think it's an old habits die hard, and just like with every aspect of my life, if I'm honest, I second guess myself way too much. That looks pretty good, but I think I'll make a cut further back and slide that. You know what's funny about that Dan comment is I'm not sure whether to believe you or not. There's a lot of people who claim that Dan doesn't know his stuff, but I'm not intelligent enough to... Oh, yeah, you're right about that, John. I can make my cut on any track, and it will move all the tracks. But I think it's a visual thing for me. Sometimes I'll do it like earlier when I spotted a tom track that was out of time. Dang it! See, I'm doing it again. I guess it's just a habit that I don't even realize I'm doing. See, I'm still doing it now that I'm actively thinking about it. I'm still doing it, and I guess it's just because my mouse tends to go where I look. But that would, I mean, it seems like a small thing, but in the grand scheme of things, that would shave a lot of time off of a project if I could just train myself to stop moving my mouse and just focus on one track and just go down the line, because I can clearly see the two tracks that I'm wanting to work with. I'm going to do it this time. I'm going to click on my kick track and move it for the snare. Now here I know that should be on the 1, so I'll cut that. Toucan Studios, John Matthews is with us. Good morning. Now this is a fun one. I think what I'm going to do here is make a cut before that and slide that whole section down. I'd like to go back and hear that and see what this sounds like. Now that is not on the grid, but I actually like it. I mean, some people may argue that, but if it sounds good, it is good. I may go back and change that later, but for right now, it sounds fine to me. Again, I never want to have a completely robotic performance, but at the same time, I do tend to find myself going through here and doing a bit more than what's actually necessary. I guess just for the sake of practice, if nothing else. All right, we're slowly but surely making some progress here. That one may cause a bit of a glitch, but I'll find out when I do another pass through for accuracy. That one I'm going to leave for the time being and check it. It's always weird editing your own performance and realizing how off you are. But it's not that much off. It's just enough to be dangerous. Okay, that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and hop out of fast edit mode. And let's take a listen to this heavier section and see if this edit was good or garbage. Oh, a quick note. I tend to listen to this in context. There was a time where I would listen to it in solo, and you can find a lot of glitches. And I mean, you want your work to be clean, but if I don't hear something in context after passing through it a few times, I kind of tend to not touch it. And in context, that sounds pretty good to my ear. Now let's run this one more time, possibly two, but I want to go ahead and enable the metronome. I want to make sure that is routing through monitoring effects so you guys can hear it, but I'll turn it down. Give me just a moment to spot check this for volume. Okay, so it's there well enough for a decent reference. And thank you for translating that for me. I wasn't sure if that was spam or not. Now, is what Batman is saying there, and I agree, I like the push and pull, And as far as the imperfections that I'm talking about is I want to make sure that I haven't created any audible glitches just from crossfades being in the wrong place. So at this point I want to solo this, and I'll have the metronome on for just a little bit of reference. But what I'm mostly listening for is if I hear any crunchiness, distortion, double hits, things that exist in a crossfade that shouldn't. And it's hard to explain that until we hear one. Hopefully we won't hear one, so let's see what we got. And I didn't hear anything in that was cause for concern. Now, if I were sure that I wanted to commit to this, at this point I could draw a box around my drum tracks and I could render those. Just render them as a new take. Just for the sake of argument, let's try that. Shouldn't take too terribly long. Actually, I want to cancel that. I don't want to render them. I think what I was thinking of is consolidating those, which would glue them. I guess glue in and of itself would be sufficient. So I could glue the items, and that would create a solid waveform for each one. So now that is the edited performance without all the splits, which will allow me to not accidentally click and move things again. Oh, awesome. So let's go back through that one more time with the music, and then I'm going to call it a day and go spend some time with my lady friend. So from the top one more time. Me too. right, so there we have a fully edited performance that, while it probably has a couple of little things in there, I feel that that's passable. Now, there's some issues in the mix, most definitely, because this was a pretty quick mix, but the drum performance sounds really solid. Do I have 10 more minutes? Totally up to you.
If you need 10 more minutes, that's fine.
Okay. My wife has graciously given me another 10 minutes. Thanks for stopping by Audio Mutt Studios. I hope to see more of you in the future. Definitely enjoy the channel, man. So she's given me a few more minutes. Let's take a look at one more project. This is something that I recorded, I think it was 2 years ago, like right around the start of pandemic. We had started this project. This was a punk band called the Gunpowder Plot. I don't know if Mr. Esri is still in here. Let's find out. Yes, that was me playing all the parts. Okay, so it looks like Sam may still be in here, but Sam was the drummer on this project, and all this is at the moment is drums and bass. I will not give the name of the song because I generally don't curse, but you can probably see it up there. And it's the song sounds good. I really like the bass, and this one I mic'd a live bass cabinet and also captured a DI, but I'm not using the DI at all. This really isn't mixed. It's just very roughly mixed just for feel. And I want to see if we can maybe clean up this last part of this song real quick. Because like listening to the first part, if I look at it on the grid, it's not in time, but it sounds fine. But the last part after this break is it got way off, and I think we can fix that pretty quick. So let's take a listen. I love this bass. Okay, so as you can hear, I mean, there was some timing issues beforehand, but once we get past that break, it gets all over the place, and I think we can fix this really quick. So I'm gonna first get rid of my takes there so I can focus, and I think I just want to focus on this blue part here. I don't know why I've got that going on, so I'm gonna delete this real quick and drag that out so I've got one contiguous piece of audio. Alright, let's do this. So I've got my kick and snare, my snapping is turned off, and pretty much same procedure as before. I need to make one cut real quick to get that action going. Todd, I don't currently have an actual schedule for much of anything. This was my primary reason for wanting to stream today was that I've really not done a video this week. There's some life changes, and it's nothing major, like no illness or anything like that, but there was some change at my job, and I've had to take on some more responsibilities that has me actually working more in office as opposed to being here at home. And of course, when working from home, you can multitask and do a lot more things and get stuff done. But let's see, splashy cymbals. Honestly, with this is not a project that I have any intention of finishing. It was something, just a quick recording done for a friend, and this was recorded 2 years ago, and he actually just reached out to me a day or two ago asking if I still had the source files because he wants to finish it. All he ever got done was the bass and the drums, and then we had pandemic problems, and the another fun story is the person in question also had some issues with the FBI that got sorted out. He was accused of domestic terrorism, and and was able to disprove that, but it kind of threw his life into a bit of a whirlwind for a while. And he's ready to finish this stuff now. Of course, he's moved to a different city, but I'm just going to send him the raw files from this and let him do what he wants to do with it. I actually totally forgot about the project until like a day or two ago. How much? Okay, I've still got a few minutes left. Let me see if I can find this real quick, just for you to be able to see. Oh, what is the overlay chat messages? There is a Chrome plugin, and I'll send it to you on Discord so you got more information. I just found it last night. It's this live chat overlay, and it gives you a URL to plug in for the chat overlays. I've got this thing, the pop out, and like right here we can see that Michael Bryant, thank you, gave me $5, and whatever I click, it sends it over to that overlay, and I can clear the messages at will. I don't know why it shows everything this big. I haven't found a way to control that, but at least it helps me with old eyes and a 4K screen. Let's see, what is his name? That's all good. It's on the it's like public news. Oh well. I can't find it, but it was all over some photos that he had done for a band photo. They were taking some photos in front of our local police station and city hall, and it was him wearing a Guy Fawkes mask with a fake Molotov cocktail behind his back. It was actually just vegetable oil in a bottle, and he had permission from the police to do the photos. They were totally aware of what he was doing, but someone, I guess, had it in for him and took a lot of stuff out of context from the band's Facebook page, made a stink about it, and reported him to the FBI, and of course they did a lengthy investigation. Which, if I'm honest, is the absolute most punk rock thing that could possibly happen to the band. Now, since I'm not necessarily interested in finishing this project, I want to just try to blow through this real quick and play it back and see if it's improved things or not. I probably should have checked my grid spacing before I started, but that's looking pretty good. It's simple, typical punk beat. I think the biggest problem with this, if memory serves, was the occasional offbeat on the kick. Now that's punk rock right there. Okay, I think that finished it, so let's see if that improved it or if I made things worse, since I didn't double check my work. I like this ending. That was Sam. All right, let's see. Are we still? That is the wrong button. Is that the right button? You're on the air. All right, so that's the missus, and I think that's about all my time for today. Thank you so much for giving me an extra. I said I was going to be done at 10. It is 10:25. I was close, but I had permission. Thank you guys and girls for tuning in, and if you are not on it already, let me find that link again. There we go. There is our link for Discord. I don't know how do you go about doing a multi-line comment on YouTube? I don't know. That is a very good question. It kind of isn't, but at the same time, the way that it was nowhere near in time, and it made my ears bleed. So thank you guys again for joining us today. Thank you for the donations, and hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. It's been fun. Now this is the part where I pretend that I've got my crap together and figure out how to switch this to a different scene.